Hello there. Jaffa, Cree.
As I'm sure you deduced from the title of this video, this is a breakdown of the Jaffa species from the Stargate franchise. The Jaffa are a warrior race who are genetic offshoots from humans whose ancestors were genetically modified after being enslaved by the Goa'uld to become both incubators for their young and warriors for their empire. As a result, their entire culture was shaped around the belief system that the Goa'uld system lords were gods, such as Apophis, Anubis, Ra, etc., and a warrior culture to instill in them a fighting ethos that could be exploited by the Goa'uld to fight against their enemies, both foreign and domestic. The Jaffar's belief that the Goa'uld are gods both gives them great courage in battle and fortitude, and a belief that if they are slain, their Goa'uld gods will raise them up to heaven as a reward for their service. This makes them very dangerous, fanatical enemies that will not surrender, will not back down, and will not hesitate to kill you if they believe it is what their god wishes to happen. Although it is unknown exactly which Goa'uld system lord is specifically responsible for the breeding of the first Jafar, it is probable that it was the system lord Ra, as he was the first Goa'uld, we believe, to have set foot on Earth, and their creation must have taken place not long after this event, along with the enslavement of the rest of mankind, or the Tauri as they were known back then. In their position in Goa'uld society within the greater Goa'uld Empire, the Jafar have a complex relationship with their gods and a complicated position with multiple functions within the empire itself. First and foremost, they are warriors for the Goa'uld, expendable soldiers whose lives are not as valuable as those of the symbiotes that they carry. Even they are not held in particularly high regard. The Jafar are also incubators for the Goa'uld's young, and it may be this purpose for which they were originally created. Each Jafar has a larval form Goa'uld in a pouch located on their abdomen. This is a symbiotic relationship with the Jafar. It gives the Jafar greater strength, resilience, longer life, and better health and stamina. It also makes them more effective warriors by having the larval Goa'uld in their belly. As they gestate the child, they also benefit from its heightened immune system and regenerative powers, which are considered gifts from the gods by the Jafar. From the Goa'uld's perspective, this is a simple arrangement that both gives them better soldiers but also improves the blending process between symbiote and host. By incubating a larval Goa'uld within the pouch of a species very similar to what is intended to be the host of that symbiote in the future, it improves the potential for successful blending and decreases the chance of rejection. This improves the Goa'uld's chances of prosperity as a species as a whole. Although strictly speaking the Jafar are themselves slaves, it is not a state in which they consider themselves to be living in. They consider themselves to be the children of the gods, the chosen. They often serve as priests and other high-ranking clerical positions within the Goa'uld Empire, as well as warriors. This gives the Jafar a sense of freedom and purpose that is often lacking from the Tauri slaves, which the Jafar are a tier above, but only barely. From the Goa'uld's point of view, neither race is particularly important to them, other than serving a function within the greater Goa'uld Empire for them to stand on. Despite this, the Jafar make formidable warriors, and almost every enemy of the Goa'uld has died at the hands of a Jafar or at the end of a Jafar staff weapon, the preferred weapon of choice for use by the general infantry of the Goa'uld Empire. The staff weapon is a long, approximately 2 meters in length, staff, which is of metal construction and has weighted at one end for balance, while the other end retains a small ion cannon that, although not that accurate, is long range and very powerful, and in a skilled user is a formidable weapon, although primarily it is a weapon of intimidation and terror as most of the Goa'uld's enemies are technologically inferior in themselves, quite often just slaves of the Goa'uld, such as the Tauri, who are more afraid of this weapon than actually in any real danger from it. Although a likely unintentional side effect of the breeding of the Jafar and their training as warriors for the Goa'uld is that the Jafar have a strict sense of honor and are extremely loyal, both to their own kind and to their Goa'uld gods. Although this loyalty would be tested from time to time, many first primes, as they are known, which is the highest rank any Jafar can hope to achieve within the military, being the head of a particular system lord's army and overall military forces. These individuals usually are a lot more aware that the Goa'uld are not gods than the Goa'uld would like them to believe, but simply accept their position and believe that is just the way the universe works. The Jafar, as stated, are honourable, and from the Goa'uld point of view this becomes an Achilles heel when the Jafar realise how cowardly and ruthless and unnecessarily callous and cruel their gods truly are, and when they begin to see themselves as a whole species rather than individual factions and unite against them, the Jafar would lead an extremely successful and bloody revolt against the Goa'uld system lords, which would ultimately bring down their empire and give rise to an independent Jafar state, which would inherit much of the Goa'uld's former territory, but lacking much of its egomaniacal, militaristic, imperialistic ambitions, such as enslaving whole populations of humans for the benefit of the Jafar state. In the aftermath of the Goa'uld Empire, the Jafar would take their place as one of the superpowers of the Milky Way galaxy, and one of its greatest defenders, often now not being the oppressors of the beleaguered human worlds of the galaxy, who had formerly been slaves of the Goa'uld. Taking something of a sympathetic eye towards them, the Jafar would often defend these worlds, although they would still often put their own society first. By proxy, many other human worlds such as Earth would benefit from an alliance with the Jafar, as would other human and non-human civilizations like the Serican and the Hebridan and others. It is a little unclear exactly how well the Jafar understand, however, much of the technology that they inherited from the Goa'uld system lords. An alliance with the Tok'ra, a race of Goa'uld rebels who resented the idea of oppression and imperialism by the Goa'uld, does somewhat help this, in that there is a race of people who can help them maintain their ships and technology, maybe even help them build new ones, but it's unclear exactly how well the Jafar understand the vessels that they use. How involved the Jafar were in the construction and maintenance of these ships is again vague and unclear. It is likely that their understanding is limited, and most construction and maintenance would have been undertaken by Goa'ulds, not wanting the Jafar to think too much or gain too much of an understanding of their science or their technology, wanting them to continue believing that it was magic and simply the power of the gods, not that there was any technological hand behind it. The Jafar, however, are not stupid, nor are they rigid and inflexible, or naive in any stretch of the imagination. They have all the ingenuity and intelligence of any human civilization, and the benefit of thousands of years of history and experience and understanding. The Jafar themselves are very long-lived, living for at least 200 years. They, with earning their freedom from the Goa'uld, have been able to expand their minds and their knowledge considerably, and given enough time they will likely build upon the technology that they have inherited. But in the short term it is something of a weakness, as they will be only limitedly capable of repairing and maintaining and fielding new vessels, if any at all. So losing a single ship or stash of weaponry could be catastrophically damaging to the Jaffa Empire. But this short-term weakness is easily overcome by the Jaffar's strength of spirit, honor, and loyalty to family, community, and civilization, and they would go on to build a strong society with close allies with the Tauri and others. and freed from the Goa'uld's influence, they were able to build a stronger, more efficient war machine. One that was not built around the idea of fear and intimidation of one's enemies, but of the actual destruction and conquest of them. The Jaffa were far more competent tacticians than many Goa'uld, meaning they could exploit, free from the Goa'uld now, better tactics and strategies that they were unable to actualize before, with the Goa'uld's simple belief that fear and intimidation was the best way to accomplish it, and the Goa'uld, having no regard for the lives of their soldiers, would easily sacrifice 1,000,000 Jaffa to win a minor victory, whereas the Jaffa could now achieve the same goal with minimal to no casualties by simply applying intelligence and tactics to the battle to outwit and outmaneuver their enemy, rather than simply bombard them with heavy fire and lives until you ground them into submission. The ships and weapons, which were predominantly inherited from the Goa'uld Empire by the Jaffa, included, on the larger end, the Goa'uld pyramid ship or Hatak warship. This is a formidable and fast vessel, heavily armed gunship carrying large numbers of fighters and heavily armed with ion cannons and powerful shields. The vessel, though, was as much for show as it was for force. It could have been more heavily armed, it could have been more versatile, but was still an impressive battle wagon and warship for the Jaffa to field. What it lacked in point defense systems or in the ability to be a more versatile ship, it made up for by being part of a larger battle group, which this included the smaller gliders that were capable of ground attack, infantry support missions, escort, scout, and other such basic missions, as well as other reconnaissance craft such as the Til'c or Goa'uld cargo ship, which was usually not armed but could be, and was used as a light transport, cargo vessel, and troop transport if needed. The vessel also did carry dedicated troop transport vessels, as well as it could carry the much more formidable and impressively designed Goa'uld Al-Kesh. This ship was a mid-range bomber capable of both spatial combat and planetary assault. It was also equipped with an independent hyperdrive and shields, unlike the gliders. All combined, the Jaffa could use these vessels to be lethally effective, until such time as they were able to build upon the technology to build even more impressive ships in the distant future. For the personal infantrymen of the Jaffa, again the armour was inherited from the Goa'uld, usually serpent or Horus Guard forms of armour. This armour was more for show than to be effective, and was not even bulletproof. Personal shields, although available, were usually reserved for the Goa'ulds or other high-ranking personnel, but not for the Jaffa. For weaponry, the staff weapon was the primary weapon of choice, although there were other options available, and as a sidearm, the Zat'nik'tel was available, but was not often carried by the average Jaffa warrior. This weapon was again as much for intimidation as it was for lethality, with a 3-shot attack system automated into the weapon, with the first shot causing intense pain and then possibly unconsciousness. The second shot would kill you, and the third shot would disintegrate your body. This weapon, as I said, was as much about intimidation as it was about being an effective weapon, although it was undeniably very powerful, albeit relatively short range and not very accurate. What did you think of the Jaffa? Do you think they measure up to other sci-fi franchise warrior races? Please vote in the top right corner. Thank you.